Hey everyone, it's Chris here at TKM Podcast. Today we've got a very special guest by the name of Mark Belchamber. Mark is obviously by the uniform as a paramedic and shares a really good story around post-traumatic stress and also the recovery and how it's been and how it's been able to kind of grow through the process. So Mark, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come and join us. And to kick things off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I'm a paramedic, father of two, live in New Zealand, but come from the UK. Lived over there for 38 years and worked in the London Ambulance Service. Did a fair bit over there, got involved, fingers in quite a lot of pies. And then, we went to Alaska and Canada in the year 2000 and thought, wow, why do we confine ourselves to one side of the world our entire lives? And started looking for jobs. Basically, my wife is a teacher, I was a paramedic. We were looking for jobs that were English speaking and needed those skills. And through one way or another, we ended up here in New Zealand and ended up in St. John in New Zealand and have been there ever. They haven't caught up with me yet, so I'm still here.
Nice. And so when did you come to New Zealand?
We landed in October 2005 and stayed in Taranaki ever since.
Nice. Beautiful. Taranaki is an awesome part of the country. I have said to myself that if given half the chance, I'd actually move down to New Plymouth. It's kind of like cross between Wellington and Auckland, just kind of merged together. It's a beautiful place. Love it.
It is a lovely place. I actually live in a place called Inglewood, which is 15, 20 minutes outside of New Plymouth.
Nice. I know it very, very well. In fact, the last time I was in Inglewood, I was bailing a mate out whose clutch had broken down and blown up, and it was the middle of the night. And surprisingly, despite the fact it was the middle of the night, the minute we stopped to kind of provide assistance, a police officer turned up. It was like, where on earth did you come from just to find us right now? But hey, it's all good. It's beautiful, beautiful spot of the country. Really like it.
Yeah.
And so let's get into it then. So in terms of like your career, obviously you're with St. John now. I'm assuming you're still as a paramedic, and so you're on the ambulances. How did you get into that career, and why that career, and not doctoring, nursing, whatever, and other kind of medical roles?
Well, I mean, I'm 58, and when I went to school, they basically made you take your options at whenever you were 14, 15, and that was your life path set. But I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, and so I just flitted from job to job. There was no real structure to my life, and I kind of went to I was in a biker. Just a simple biker group, and we all hung out together, rode together, and one of them guys was a paramedic, and he gave a talk one evening on being a paramedic. And I thought, and I just knew I was bored with 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I just knew it didn't suit me. I got so bored quickly, and I thought, this is a bit interesting. I'll look for the emergency services. If I'm brutally honest, I did not want to be a copper in London because they go through all sorts of stuff. I don't think I got the courage to do that. So it was then become fire or ambulance, and London Ambulance Service were taking on 400 students a year, and I got in on one of the intakes, and so I just kind of thought, well, I'll try that. Never really looked back, really enjoyed it. The variety of it, the difference, the good I was doing. And then in London, I went on to become a team leader, a training officer, a CBRN provider, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear provider, a few other bits and pieces. But it got to the stage where my wife was saying to me, when am I actually going to see you again? Because I was at work, and then when I wasn't at work, at home, I was at work, working on the computer. So we kind of thought, it's time to take a step back, just relive life. And that's when I thought, well, I'm going to step back from everything I was doing, completely move countries. And also because we wanted to explore, we just wanted to see what the rest of the world looked like. And ended up in St. John in New Zealand, in Taranaki, because I had a friend over here and he said, we got some vacancies, why didn't you apply? And I happened to get in. And then I've always been what's called, it's had various iterations. You call them paramedics in the UK, intensive care paramedics, advanced life support paramedics, critical care paramedics. But essentially, you're the highest qualified, and I now drive around in a ute, and I have all the extra gear, extra support. And so I will go to the really, really serious stuff, or I'll go to the stuff that some of my colleagues who may not have the same skill sets as me, I can go and support them with my skill sets. And so that's what I'm doing today. And I still really, really enjoy it. I mean, it'll be time to stop soon, just purely because I've done it since 1993, I think. And it's time to do, I don't want to be doing shift work when I'm 60, and I'm 58 now, as I say, and it's just time to look for something else to do. And I may stay in St. John, but I won't be doing 2 days, 2 nights, 4 off, and because the older I get, the harder I find it is to my body.
No, I get that. I understand. And so as a career, do you find it rewarding then? I mean, obviously you've been in there a while now. So what is it that you find keeps you motivated to keep wanting to go back and be the best that you can be?
I think I just know I make a difference, and because I've got a lot of years under my belt, I can make a difference to patients, but I can also make a difference to my colleagues. I've been I've been a training instructor. I've been training provider education, and I know that I can assist people coming through and help with their journeys. I can, we can work together, and through my experience, we can grow together. But it's the difference I make to the patients, to my colleagues. And I won't lie, herring around town with your lights on and going through traffic is quite fun too. It's the difference you make. It's the fact that that someone was in a really bad way, 10 minutes ago, and you've done something that at the very least has made them feel more reassured. And more often than not, you've got drugs or procedures or skill sets that can make them significantly better, and that's a real satisfying. That's job satisfaction.
Nice. No, that's a really good answer. And so in terms of as a career, is it difficult to get into? So if there's people watching this video thinking, that sounds like a viable career option for myself. I mean, are there any kind of qualifications or experience that you'd need to get prior to even applying? Or
excuse me, it used to be purely vocational. So you applied, you got in, you did on the job training. I can't speak to the UK now because I haven't got my experience of the UK is now 20 years old. But I know that most services in the first world certainly have professionalised and had a much more educational model than vocational. So you will go to university. You can go and do a paramedicine degree in the same way you can do a history degree or an arts degree or an English degree or a science degree, and you will come out with a bachelor of paramedicine or equivalent degree. So most of the time now, you will go to university, you will get a degree in something, and then you will apply. It's not hard to get a job. It's just not vocational anymore. You will have to have some educational background for it, because, and rightly so, we're bringing
Gotcha.
education into what was once a vocational profession. It is now a proper profession.
Mm, mm. Yeah. No, no, totally. And so, I mean, obviously, we you know we talk about all the kind of the good side of being in an ambulance with the lights and the sirens and dashing around and wearing the fancy uniform that everyone's like, oh, so glad you're here. But surely there are downsides. So for example, I'm from the UK as well, and like you, I could never imagine a career being a police officer, and then later on, I also decided actually being on being on an ambulance, a paramedic, equally probably just as bad, but only on Friday and Saturday nights when everyone's getting turfed out of pubs and nightclubs.
Yeah.
And so surely there's a downside to wearing the green uniform, right? So
There is. I
is,
mean,
what's that like?
you you go in bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and wide-eyed, and you kind of you have these idealistic, I can change the world, and you can to a certain extent, but you also see, obviously, and do things where you see that life is so tremendously and completely unfair, where people make horrific decisions, where you see some really, really good people and you see some really, really bad people. It's pretty random. Yes, you can bet that you're going to get more alcohol related and probably abuse, assault related calls on a weekend or on a long weekend. But that's not a rule. That's just a generalisation. And I think it's important to recognise that if you go and apply for a job now, or you do a course now, or you join a service now, an ambulance service now, they are very, very aware of how psychologically and mentally damage can occur. Whereas 1993, 1995, when I joined, it was toughen up, harden up, get over it, have a laugh, black humour. There was no real perception of what we now call PTSD. There was no understanding that, or if there was an understanding that calls hurt you, you had a drink with your mates and you didn't talk about it. And so for me, certainly that damage definitely accrued. And so there are downsides where you see and do things. I don't believe that my job is a job that anyone was ever really designed to do. I don't think in a perfect world I would have a job, because I don't think it's. I don't know how to say it. I just think I do a job that probably, and many people watching this will probably have doing a job that probably we weren't actually supposed to do. We just live in a really imperfect world.
Interesting. And so, like you started to kind of wander into the toll it's taken on you around like PTSD. What was it like, and how did you recognize there was even a problem in the first place? How did it manifest for you?
Well, the basic answer to your question, that's actually a really important answer, is I didn't recognize it. I honestly can't tell you what happened. I can tell you what other people told me happened. I can tell you that I was distant. I became aggressive. I became verbally abusive to my family. I didn't want to go out. I became hyper acute of stuff, really aware of stuff. I would jump when the bells went off or the tones went off for a job. I would be driving to jobs, taking the long way round because I didn't want to get there. I'd be worried in the quiet about what the next job might be. I'd be processing stuff at night. Later on, I'd be having horrific nightmares and real mood swings. I've never really been into drugs, but I certainly hit the alcohol. I withdrew. I became a very different person. But the thing is, if you compared me in 1993 to, say 2000 and whatever, you would say, wow, you're so different. But it's a real drip, drip, drip because you begin to isolate yourself and protect yourself by subconsciously pushing people away, subconsciously not getting involved in stuff, subconsciously emotionally becoming less responsive and supportive. And the ones around you, it's like the frog in boiling water analogy, where you gradually raise the heat, they don't actually notice it. And the ones around you, you begin to have more arguments, you begin to have more disagreements, you begin to become less affectionate. It's a slow creep. So you can't compare A with B. You can have A with AA with AAA with AA, and you kind of gradually you get to B, but it's a very, very, very slow process. By which time, when it's all going wrong, it's going really wrong. You've driven everyone away, and I did not see this at all. And the breaking point for me, so I think I use an analogy like shards of glass, and every time you do something that hurts you, a tiny piece of something like a tiny shard of glass sticks into you, and you can deal with one shard of glass, and then you do something else, another tiny shard of glass sticks into you, and you've got over a period of time these things that affect you. Lots and lots of tiny little shards of glass stick in, but they begin to form a mass. And eventually this mass grows and grows and grows until there's one final shard of glass that makes you explode. And you don't realize it until that one final thing hits you. And then it's all over. You explode and it goes. And I had been taking on shards of glass for literally decades. Until I went to one job that absolutely knocked me sideways. But that was when was that? 2011-ish, something around there. But again, I knew it had knocked me sideways, but I buried that job and I kept going till the end of 2018, when it absolutely, I just fell apart at the seams. But at no point did I recognize it. What made me eventually understand that something wasn't right was my wife, who we've been married since, I should know this, 1994. We've been married since 1994. And we're best friends. And she stood one side of the counter to me and said, "You need to get help, or you need to get out." And it still hurts.
Wow.
But that was even then, I thought, I haven't really got a problem. I've probably got a bit of an issue. I accept that probably theoretically some of these jobs have been bad for me, but I don't actually. I'll go and talk to someone, but it's just to appease my wife. But that's what made me sit up and take notice. But even then, I did not recognise it. And then I went and saw. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in. I have to say that that's a very, very profound statement, because one of the things which I had I've always considered is if you're not medically trained, of course you're not expected to pick it. You're not meant to be able to sit. Yet here we are. You're medically trained. Well, you're more medically trained than I am, and yet even you're turning around saying that you didn't spot it. So it's profoundly important for people to recognize that. And I'm so glad that you are still with your wife and that she had the courage to kind of mention it. So yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
well, she's a half Irish redhead, so she's no retiring wallflower. um, but yeah, it was. It was. Then I had a whole battle with ACC about whether it was covered or not, and that's a whole different story. But eventually, after a long issue,
Yeah.
I managed to get to see a clinical psychologist called Victoria, and she was just incredible. And she took me on one of the hardest journey, probably the hardest journey I've ever been on, and it was tough, taking me back through, making me realise, making me see, revisiting stuff, unpacking, reparking, and it's the hardest journey I've been on. Just that treatment for what was diagnosed as PTSD, and it's
Yeah,
such a
totally.
hard journey. It's and I'm not selling it, am I? What I will tell you is that if I had not done that, though, if I had not invested that, my doctor likened it to an abscess, where you have to open it, scrape it out, go through that pain, and allow it to heal. And the first part's crap, but the second part is the healing. Had I not done that, I wouldn't have a family. I wouldn't have a job. I don't know where I would be now. I don't know. Yeah,
Wow.
would I? Yeah, I don't know what decisions I'd have made, but I certainly would not have retained my family, retained my job, and it was,
Yep.
I was running scared of everything. I was, and the thing I've told you that I'm very experienced, and I was respected by my colleagues, and the problem is you can't show them that. So there's this extra pressure of not falling apart, of saying I've got it together, of not showing your weakness because they look up to you, and you kind of feel like you have a responsibility for them. So there's that added kind of I can't say anything, I can't say anything. And when I did finally, just I in 2000 late 2018, I told my boss that I'd had it, absolutely had it, and he said we didn't have enough staff, and he said, can you stay for another 3 months, and then I'll let you go. And of course, not wanting to let the service down, I said yes. I don't I don't blame him. I don't blame the service. It's just we're in trouble. He at that point, no one really understood what the depths of PTSD were, how to manage it, what the appropriate things were to do. And I said yes, I can stay. And those 3 months were hugely damaging, hugely damaging. And yeah, it just I was off the end of 2018, and I think it was when I went and saw my psychologist. She said, I can get you back to work, and I laughed at her. I said, I ain't going back. I couldn't even walk back through a set of ambulance garage doors. I just couldn't. But after her help and some personal journey, I went back to work in 2020, and I didn't know this. It was February 2020, and then I think 6 months later, COVID reared its ugly head. But But it was really, once I realised that Victoria could help me, it was really, really important that I went back and I did the jobs that challenged me, and I went to the things that scared me, and I faced the things that I was running away from, and that the strategies and the techniques and the unpacking and the repacking and all the pain and all the talking and all the tears had been effective, and that I could go back and challenge the calls that I couldn't challenge previously. The damage that was so destructive previously was still, you never lose the damage. The damage is there, but you are able to approach it with a sense of, I've been here before. I'm at peace with that damage now, and I can do other stuff that is not going to destroy me. It might hurt, but I have strategies and techniques that allow me to say, I can do this. It's not going to be comfortable, and this is what I need to do afterwards, or this is what I need to do now. But I can stay professional, and then I can go and do what I need to do to retain my mental capacity and my mental health.
Gotcha. So there's a number of kind of questions that have come out as you've just shared your story there. And it sounds like a really, really tough journey that you've been through. I guess the first thing I'd like to ask about is, you mentioned that ACC was a real trouble. And obviously I have an opinion as to why that might be the case, but I'd love to hear it firsthand from you in terms of why ACC was so difficult to work with, when surely they're here to help you, right?
100%. And if you break your leg or you hurt your back or fall off a ladder, you go to your doctor, you get signed off, job done. If you have a mental health injury or a psychological injury, it has to be down to one specific event. And the irony is, the more experience you have in any kind of service, the more likely you are to have had a number of events that damage you. So which one do you want me to tell you about? Is it I mean, I won't go into too many details, but is it the baby? Is it the shooting? Is it the stabbing? Is it the assault? Is it which one of the myriad events that I've been to do you think might have hurt me? So they want one specific event. And many, many people can't say, this is the event that sent me over the edge. Because I can tell you, I can remember jobs from the UK that I will never, ever forget. So was that where the damage started? I remember the call in New Zealand that hit me the hardest. And so I used that as the single event that tipped me over the edge. The problem with that was ACC didn't accept that I hadn't got prior damage. And I guess you could equate it to you having, I don't know, arthritis, but also breaking your arm. And they will get out of it by saying, oh, no, you broke your arm because you had arthritis, not because of the accident. And it's a similar kind of get out.
Right.
And so it's a physical injury. It's a really accessible, good system. Mental injury, it's appalling, because you're already struggling. You're already fighting off all these emotions, and you've shut down, and you've got all this just carnage going on in your head. And then you have to write it all down on a piece of paper. And then you have to email it or post it to someone who you've never met before, and open yourself up. And open up this wound to some random person who's going to decide whether or not they are going to deign to even entertain it. Then they ask for more information. In my case, they lost the paperwork. They didn't liaise with St. John. The caseworkers didn't talk to each other. And that's not St. John's fault. They just did. The ACC didn't come to the party. I think my last communication with them was something like the February having applied to them in something like the previous November, so already 3 months over. And I then, between February
Jeez.
and June, no one could. There was literally no one answering any emails, any phone calls, any contacts from anyone, from ACC, from my doctor, from St. John, from me, nothing. And then St. John, having supported me off sick for 6 or 7 months. I mean, my bosses were really good. They kept me, but they essentially sent me a letter saying, "We cannot continue to support you." I mean, St. John are, they're a charity, but they're also a business. They can't just keep paying people for not turning up to work. And they said to me, at some point, we're going to have to let you go. And they were very good about redeployment and all, but I understand their business decision. And they had kept me on for far longer than they would have kept some other people on. So I have no issue with my immediate bosses. But they essentially said, "You're out of a job." So at that point, I was out of a job. I had no contact from ACC. I had no recourse to anything, and I was still a mess. And I'd also opened myself up to a bunch of random people who didn't seem to care. And so I wrote to the Herald and said, "ACC are crap. Can you please print this open letter to them so at least they reply to me?" And an amazing reporter called Annalise said, "No, I'm not going to print your letter. I'm going to do a full front page spread interview with you." And I was on the front page of the Daily Herald. At which point, I was on the front page of the Daily Herald. I've still got a link somewhere because I do have a website with some of this on. ACC, within 2 hours, I tell you, I hadn't realised it had gone to print, but it went to print. Within 2 hours of business day, I had a phone call from the senior ACC manager saying, "We've stuffed up." And I said, "No, Sherlock." And they said, and I had 3 individual senior managers phone me up and say, "We've got this wrong." And there's something called a deemed decision. So they have to, I forget what the timeframes are, but there's a certain time frame by which they have to respond to you. And if they don't respond to you, you are automatically then allowed to claim their stuff. And they'd gone beyond that time frame. So it was purely through their own incompetence.
Wow.
And because I made a statement through the New Zealand Herald that I actually got any help at all. But once I got the help, the ball started rolling. But the problem is, I know for a fact that I'm not an individual in this. This is not my own singular individual experience. I know lots and lots and lots of people have had this experience. I personally know of 3 people in my organisation who've had this experience. And I know of, until you've been there, when you have all the demons running around your head and you feel like no one cares, you've got no support, you've got no access, everything's against you. And you just, day after day after day, you're looking for the inbox email, you're looking for the thing in the post, and it doesn't arrive. It comes a point where you begin to give up. And I know for a fact that there are people who gave up and made the completely wrong decision. I know for a fact. And that really, really angers me.
Wow.
Really angers me because you're just a number, you're just a name, you're just a nothing. And so ACC were absolutely appalling in my case. The caveat to that is this was 2018, 2019, 2020. I don't know what has changed. What I do know is that last year I had a colleague talk to me, some come to me and say, "Can I talk to you about where I'm at?" And that she was having the same experience. So I don't think a lot of lessons have been learned. But the problem, the singular problem is they want that one event. And if you've been raped, or if you've been physically assaulted, or if you could say that's what caused it. But if you're a veteran of medicine, a veteran of the police, a veteran of war, a veteran of something long term where you've consistently been exposed to stuff that you want to run away from, but you have not been able to run away from, and so your mind is consistently torn, and you are, your limbic system is trying to protect itself, and you are overriding that continuously by saying, "This is my job, this is my calling, this is my duty," and you override that. Then eventually, your brain will go, "I'm not having this," and you fall over.
That's a real tough gig. And I think from my experiences from the work that we do through the charity is, I don't think ACC has changed. I think it's always been like that. It was definitely like that for me as well. I will share my story one day over a beer. It's not going to go on this podcast. I won't be able to keep a straight face. I will get too angry about it. But it's real. It is a tough situation though, because and it's one that angers me particularly because of the fact that people who join a service, right, emergency service, military service, they know full well, even before they sign up, that they are walking into the lion's den, right?
Yeah.
They know that the likelihood of some form of traumatic event is going to take place, and it would be ridiculous to think that as an individual you won't be affected in some way. And it does just kind of demonstrate how poorly set up ACC is for those individuals. And you'd think, you would expect that, particularly when we talk about St. John being like really the only paramedic service in New Zealand. I know we've got them in Wellington, which is slightly different, but only in Wellington. You'd think that they might actually want to do something about it a little bit differently, particularly if they then need to call you for an accident they've had, and the person who turns up, isn't in a fit state to be able to help. I mean, it's just ludicrous. So, sorry, my volume has gone up, as you can tell. So,
no, I'm with you. I'm with you, and I have made some recommendations about there are certain professions that need to be treated differently, and it's not just me. That the police do the same thing. I think if you've been involved in any kind of combat, that's the same thing. Fire, same thing. Anything where you are. Most people run away from. We run towards. And I think if you are in a profession that runs towards what other people run away from, you need a different category, because And I'm not here to denigrate ACC. I am here to say ACC, in my case, got it spectacularly wrong. Acknowledge they got it spectacularly wrong, and from my anecdotal experience of others, haven't yet learnt the lessons from my experience.
Yeah, totally. And so we've talked about the trauma that's kind of got you to this real dark place, the compounding efforts with ACC, and then finally kind of meeting with your therapist, Victoria. I know you've spoken a little bit around the time length, and the kind of the in a very generalist way, the modalities, but if we're still going to throw kind of like techniques out there, I mean, did you go through things like CBT, or was it more like more modern? I say modern identified methods like EMDR and such like. Do you recall what they were?
I didn't do EMDR. That wasn't what Victoria used, although I know that other colleagues have used it and have found it very useful. We did some CBT.
Yep.
Victoria was brilliant. It's interesting. She was 27, never been in an ambulance, let alone served in one. And I was at this point, I don't know, I was 50 something at that point. And I looked at her and I thought, you have not got a clue. You could be my daughter, and you have no idea what I've been through. And if I'm brutally honest, I was quite disrespectful, and I've had this conversation with her myself. And she said, "Just trust me." And what was incredible was that she didn't need to understand those, didn't need to be able. She got that it doesn't matter whether you have been a victim of abuse, a victim of assault, whether you've served in the forces, whether you've served in one of the emergency services, whether you've had any number of other hugely challenging, confrontational, mentally scarring situations, the brain is really predictable, and it doesn't matter what your PTSD or PTSD type experience is. The brain will respond with flashbacks, nightmares, lack of sleep, avoidance, burying, withdrawal, aggression, drinking, addictions, and any number of other stuff. And what she was really good at was saying, this isn't generic person A, and I will treat with generic treatment B. She was really good at saying, "Okay, Mark, tell me, talk to me." And I can't remember how she did it. I remember hating, I remember not wanting to go to see her. I remember always going, what are we going to go through now? What am I going to face now? And I remember just it wasn't dread. It was kind of, I have to face this and I don't want to do it. I haven't got the energy. And it's so tiring and so draining. But she used a lot of regression. I can't remember how she did it, but she got me to talk about stuff, and she'd ignore. I'd ignore her, and she said, "Oh, talk about that," and I go, and my world would fall apart, and she'd have this amazing ability to say, "That's affecting you. Talk about that." And then we talk it through it, and then we talk through it again, and we talk through it with a different emphasis on emotion, and then we talk through it on an emphasis on what the physical things were, and then we talk through it on with an emphasis on how other people responded. And you'd tell the same story 5 or 6 times with different emphases, and each time she would bring out that's where this really hit you. And she would allow me to visit the worst of my nightmares. And she was so good because although it was awful, it was safe. And this is why it's so important to have someone who you trust implicitly, because I was figuratively, completely and utterly naked. I was figuratively, utterly, just... what's the word? The word where you're really I've forgotten the word. Not
vulnerable.
Vulnerable. Thank you. I was utterly and completely vulnerable. Yeah. No. I had. She had the ability to just take me down and destroy me. Not that she would ever have done that, but that's how vulnerable I was. And then what she did was she said, that's the bit that's hurt you, or that's where you had the wrong attitude. Not that I was wrong, but in that, I wanted to be God when I was actually just a human. I wanted to make a difference here when actually I couldn't. I wanted this person not to have made that decision where actually I had no control over that decision. I relived things and said, what only if they hadn't done that, or if only I'd been there 5 minutes earlier, or if only that. And what I tried to do was rejig life so that the tragedies didn't occur, and almost bargain. I have this bargaining with myself about how would I change that situation? And you can't change the situation when someone's already made the decision to do something and they have done it. that you are now. And it's the whole, it's allowing other people to make their decisions, but not being responsible for their decisions. It's noticing that something's happening, but not judging it. It's not. Yeah, I mean, for me, she worked out that I was someone who needed to understand that it wasn't my fault when something didn't go my way. But there's also that powerlessness where, you know, sometimes maybe someone above you's made the decision and you are subject to that decision, and there's nothing you can do about that decision. And you may have even not even been aware of that decision at the time, but you find out about the decision later, and you get this tremendous anger that you weren't able to do something about the decision that might have been incorrect. And it's all this reliving. It's bargaining. It's trying to change things that are immutable. It's trying to. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to give you 6 months of 9 months of therapy in 10 seconds.
No, it's good. It's good that you're kind of describing it, because I think there is. I mean, if we take my particular example, right? So, having served in the military, and having gone through this not necessarily a fast burnout. I mean, we're talking like over a decade before finally things just kind of like just fell to bits. And but even when I actually did actively start reaching out and seeking therapy, I still approached it a little bit like how you're describing, which was, I went to my therapist and I was like, right, we're being military, we're going to plan it all out, and every session I'm going to have an action, I'm going to take the action away, I'm going to report back, blah 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 blah. And then to his credit, I mean, the therapist, he kind of played along for a bit, but after a while, we kind of recognized and said, even that behavior that I was manifesting at that point was also a symptom of the post-traumatic stress, because of the sense of control.
Yes, absolutely.
And the interesting thing was, I wasn't emotionally ready to accept that answer yet. And it wasn't until, in essence, I don't want to say I fired him, but basically I was like, this isn't working because you're not doing what I want, what I think I need out of the session. And I went to a different therapist, and she was very good at reminding me and say, everything you are doing, even now when you're turning around and you're trying to put all these plans and you're trying to tell me how to do my job, you're doing this because it's the only thing you know to protect yourself. This is your fight flight response manifested in this situation right now. And I tell you what, the hardest thing for me, and it kind of sounds like it's the same for you, was allowing you to trust the therapist and trust the process, despite the fact you have no idea what they're going to bring up from 1 minute to the next, and so therefore you don't know how you're going to react. And there were quite a few times for me where was going through its process, and it's like, what are you feeling right now? And it's like, well, I don't really want to kind of tell you what I'm feeling right now, because to even express it, kind of makes it even more real, right? And suddenly you just realize how like for me, it was like the best way I can explain it was like, it almost was like insanity, because on one hand, I recognized, and I do not want to be in a situation at all, but I'm petrified of doing something about it. It was so scared, and incredibly difficult to kind of work through.
Oh, 100%. I echo everything you say. They're not wanting to face it. They're not wanting to go into the safety of just ignoring it. And it's interesting you use the word control. I think because you do try to control the damage because and that's I think that's why you distance yourself from people. It's so that you can control the noise. You avoid certain situations because you then control the reactions that you have or the reactions that you know will come. You get
Mm.
really angry with people who demand stuff of you because your head is so full. You're only just coping. Um, and when they say, "Can you come and help me?" I don't know, do a barbecue, or can you come and help me build a wall, or and it's a really benign request, but you are dealing with so much just to keep your head above water that one simple request
Mm.
is enough to tip you over the edge, and you get aggressive, so they don't ask again. That is a control, and it's just you can't you
Mm.
can't cope with any outside noise because the noise is just that thing that's going to tip you over the edge. And some of the analogies I've used are things like one of those vending machines, or a Coke can machine, where you pull one out and another one fills the front, and then you pull one out, another one fills, and it doesn't matter how many things you get rid of,
Yep.
something else fills the front, and it's just never ending. And I remember we had a car and it
Mm.
just needed a wheel bearing fixed. That's all it needed. I needed to make a phone call to a garage, book the car in, take it to the car. And the wheel bearing failed. I remember sitting on a wall and going, I don't know what to do. I can't do this. And saying to my wife, I can't cope with this. I can't do this. I can't fix the wheel bearing because I was so full up with self protection that one thing was too much. And I was also really interested that you say it took you 10 years because I don't know when my damage started. I'm pretty sure it started in the UK. But about 2011 was when I went to a guy who had taken a 308 and there was absolutely catastrophic damage, which obviously is, no human being wants to see that. You don't choose to see that. But the thing that broke me was, and this is the thing I used for ACC. The thing that broke me was I'll never forget walking out of up the hallway, and on the right there was a big thick wooden, I think it was oak table, and on there was a spiral bound piece of paper that had been ripped out, and he'd written this loving letter to his daughter and his ex-partner saying he couldn't go on. And I mean, practically don't touch it, it's a crime scene, but I read it and something inside me just crumbled. It just crumbled. And I remember dying inside. And that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I went outside. I didn't talk to my colleague. I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't want to be with anyone. I filled up my paperwork as slowly as I possibly could because I didn't want to do any more patients that day. And I went home and I kind of buried it, but it stayed there. It stayed there festering, and I kept pushing it away and kept pushing other people away and kept trying to protect myself. But that was 2011, and it took me till 2018 for everything else to catch up and just go. It was, it was really, really, really messy. But I think it's interesting how long we as humans can stave off what is actually unpreventable. It will happen one day. It's just over what time frame.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it's interesting because like even for me, it's like my background is military, and so I saw a little bit of time in Bosnia when all that was a thing.
I remember that.
And what was real interesting what was real interesting for me was that kind of expectation versus reality mismatch. It's like, you would probably remember the adverts that you see in the UK. It's like, join the army, you get to go skiing and parachuting
Yes.
and rock climbing and
Yeah.
this and that and all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then so you join, and they're like, yeah, you're going to go see genocide. But not only are you going to see genocide, because you're representing the United Nations, you can't do anything about it either.
Yeah.
And I definitely came back very angry. And interestingly enough, that we've had, depending on who I'm talking to, we'll either call it PTSD or we call it moral injury. All right, and I don't quite know what the difference is, but fundamentally, I came back. I was angry with the army. I was angry with the United Nations. I was angry with myself. I was angry with all the bad. Like, I was just angry. And the reason why it took a long time to even recognize that there was a problem was the fact that, as you described with ACC, if there's a physical injury, it's very obvious, right? But if you've never experienced anything other than, the need to run away, the need to escape, the need to isolate, the need to dive headfirst into a bottle of grog,
Yeah.
You don't realize that's actually part of the problem. That's actually one of the symptoms of the thing that you're going through. And even if you do, you can't articulate everything else to an adequate level for some, say like a GP to help. And so, for instance, like with myself, I would go to my GP and I'm doing my level best to explain what's going on. And the doctor's there. It's just, I'm like, I have this kind of like you can get the sense of foreboding, like hay fever's coming, and like, oh, here it is, and then finally like it hits, and you're like, right, it's here, and and the doctor's like, oh, well, that's it's good that you can recognize it. What do you do about it? And I jump on my motorbike, I bugger off to the north coast of Scotland where there is nothing there, and I take a box of cigarettes and box of beer, drink and smoke, sober up, come home. And then it's kind of like resetting the clock. And it was like, well, that sounds like an acceptable kind of outcome. Well, what's the problem with that? Everyone goes motorcycling,
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but you don't get it. I'm doing that because it's the only thing that will actually work, and even then, it doesn't work that well. And the real tipping point for me was. It was just, again, it was about the same time as for you. It was about 2018, 2019, just before COVID. And I'd gone to my GP and I was like, I am adamant I have bipolar because I'm up and I'm down, I'm left, I'm right, I'm happy, I'm sad. But the thing is, I was all over the shop multiple times per day, and I could change from happy to not happy in a heartbeat so quickly. And the doctor was just like, oh, how do you figure it's bipolar? And I was like, well, of course it's Google. And I'm like, oh yeah, Dr. Google has been to university for 7 years and got their doctor's degree and blah blah blah. And so I'm like, come on, man, just help me out, help me out. And and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, it's seeing him again, but for a whole different set of reasons. So it's really interesting, and I guess the key thing about this, and I'm going to keep bringing it up because I think it's so vitally important, is the fact that you have medical training, and yet even you still didn't recognize it, and it took someone else to tell you that there was a problem for you to even consider there might actually be something wrong. And then even though you are medically trained and there are people there who are going to help you and can help you, it's still bloody difficult to actually go seek the help. At the end of the day, regardless of the uniform you wear, you're still a human being. And I think that is the vital message that, if anyone hears anything, that's, wow.
Yeah, 100%.
That's
100%.
tough. But here's the thing. I mean, we could dwell on how bad it is. We could dwell on all the bad side and all the rest of it. But the fact is, you're still here, right? You're still here. So clearly, the therapy's had some positive effect, right? And more importantly, you're still in the uniform. You're still in the green uniform. And so how have you managed? Like, obviously, there is, the therapist and the therapy can only do so much, because it's like they can show you the road, but you have to walk down it.
Yeah.
And so how have you managed to kind of get yourself not just through the toll it's taken, but actually come out the other end, with that kind of growth and positivity, such that you can now actually represent yourself, here today, wearing the uniform, still doing the job that you love, despite all of this. I mean, how have you managed to kind of get through that, though? Because that sounds impossibly hard.
I won't lie, and I'm trying to sell the process, but I won't lie. It is phenomenally difficult. The beginning of it is, you have to be completely vulnerable and open up totally and totally honest with the psychologist, psychiatrist, whoever you see that you trust, because they have the tools to recognize where the deep down damage is and where the superficial damage is, and the difference between the two. So you have to go to them. They have to unpack, rewind, revisit, and you have to be. Like you said, you didn't want to do it. You said you were absolutely, I was the same. I just did not want to go and see Victoria. I just did not want to go because I knew it was going to hurt, and I knew it was going to be hard, and I knew I was going to have to go places I didn't want to go, and she was going to make me do things I didn't want to do, and so. Just a slight tangent. One of the I used to go, where I live is fairly rural, and I used to go possum shooting and bunny shooting, and more I'd get more and more scared of going. You go down, so from my house you go down a race, down a track, past a barn, through some trees, and into a big wooded area. And there came a point where I began to get really, really scared of going out of the house in the dark, which sounds, grown man, seen lots of stuff, done lots of stuff, and I was scared to go to the woods at night, and you feel really, really stupid, and you don't want to tell anyone because you feel like that's little kid stuff, and the reason I was scared is because at night, if I went to the woods, I would see the bodies of the people who had hung themselves, or I would see the bodies of people who had hurt them and killed themselves. And I would be genuinely worried that they would physically be there. It was really, you just have to trust me. It was real, absolutely real. And that's about an 800, between my gate and the woods, about 800 meters. And Victoria said to me, that is an outworking of your self-protection and you not dealing with the jobs you're doing. And she said, it's not, in and of itself, as an isolated thing, that's not what we treat. But you will be able to go back and do that safely in your head if we treat the damage that you have sustained. And she said to me, and this is why I say you have to do what she tells you to do, or what your clinical psych or whatever tells you to do. Because I said, I cannot make it to those woods. I cannot. I can't do it. She said, no, I don't want you to. She said, I want you to go to your gate, and then I want you to go 10 metres. I want you to stop, and I want you to come back. I said, but 10 metres is easy. And she said, yeah, 10 metres, just do the 10 metres. I did that. And she said, do that for 3 nights or something. So I did that. And then she said, I want you to go to 100 metres. And I went to 100 metres, and I came back, and I said to her, this was over a period of months, and I said to her, that was really, she said, tell me what you think. So that was really uncomfortable. She said, that's good. She said, I'm never going to get to the woods. She said, no, I don't want you to get to the woods. Forget the woods. I want you to get to that 100 metres. And I want you to sit there, and I want you to allow the fear and allow the anxiety to wash over you, and to tell yourself you're safe, and to be okay in that environment, and then come back and tell me what. And she said, if 100 metres is too far, go 50. But she said, at each point, you have to be safe. And she said, your safety zone will gradually increase until one day you'll be able to get to the woods. And she said, but that's not for a long time yet. And gradually I got further and further and further and further. And you're worried that the moon's not out. You're worried who's behind you. Every single noise petrifies you. There are obviously cows because I'm rural, and you know what cows like. They run towards you when they see it, and that's just, you crap yourself because there are cows running towards you. And then eventually it became bearable. And then she said, I want you to go to the woods, but I want you to go during the day because the day is safer. And so I do that, and I had to go with my family because I couldn't go on my own. And long story short, eventually I managed to get to the woods in the dark, but it was a long, long process. But it was a process that she managed, and you don't hit the process in one fell swoop. You do it gradually, and you're safe. And the reason I give that example is because it's important that you don't run before you can walk, but you follow the steps they tell you, because although they're uncomfortable, they're never going to put you in danger. Because had she said to me, "No, just go to the woods," I'd never have gone back, because that would have been dangerous, and they recognised that. And so that's a simple example. Another example is 2 possums got run over outside of my driveway. My driveway is about 100 metres long. 2 possums on the road, and I drove past. And as I drove past, I physically saw human body parts. They weren't possums; they were human body parts. And as I did that, I thought, "Oh, flipping heck, I'm going to have to tell Victoria this, because that's not right." And I went and saw her. I went and saw her, and I said, "Look, this is going to sound really stupid and really dumb, but there are 2 possums outside my house, and I think they're humans, and I cannot look at them. I physically cannot look at them because I'm too scared." And she said, she's really good. She told me off a lot, but she told me off really gently. She said, "That is not stupid. That is an outworking of something that we need to deal with." And she said, "We will deal with whatever has triggered that. But she said, in the meantime, during the daytime, you need to go and you need to physically look at them and say, it's just possums." And she said, you need to work your way up to doing that. And it sounds like really, really stupid things to do. But if that's what my brain was telling me, that was my reality. And when you're reinforcing the wrong reality, the mental trauma amplifies. So you have to challenge it and say to your brain, what you are telling me is not right. But you have to do it in a safe environment, and you have to do it within the right timing under the guidance of a professional. And, if you say to me, "Look, you were scared of the woods, you couldn't look at possums on the road," you just say, "Oh, you're dumb." But it's not dumb, because it's the practical outworking of the terrible damage that previous things have caused you. So this is a very long-winded way of saying I did what she told me to do. She gave me strategies. And for me, the reason I'm back here in the uniform doing what I need to do is because I'm someone, I need to prove stuff. I don't just believe, I have to prove. And so I worked out that I needed one of my hell jobs. There were a number of them. One of my hell jobs was hangings, for a number of reasons. But it's not as clean as it looks in the films. They are horrific things to look at. The body changes, the face changes. You often get a lot of bodily fluids that leak. It's a really, really violent way to die, and it really, really cut me to the quick. And I knew that I'd run away from the last one. And I knew that I had to go to someone who had made that decision and deal with the job again. And I knew that if I could do that, that was one of the calls that would say to me, actually, I'm never going to enjoy it. I never want to do another one, but actually I can, for the sake of the reason I'm employed. For my profession, I can go, I can reassure the family, I can be as dignified as possible, I can do what needs to be done, and I can deal with the situation. And for me, the reason I'm back now and doing it in the uniform is because it was part of the proof to myself that what Victoria had said and done and all the hell that I went through with her had worked, was to actually go through and do jobs that I know years ago would have been catastrophic mentally to me. And I have gone back and done that. And not only have I gone back and done it, it just so happened that I did go back to someone, and I was the closest. Not only was I the closest, I was the closest by quite some distance. And I had to go to this chap who had long since, I mean, obviously made a decision long ago because there was nothing for me to do. But I had to go, I had to look at the face, I had to feel, to confirm death. I felt the coldness of the body. I felt I was a part of the emotion of the people bystanders, because that's always family emotions and bystander emotions are always really hard to deal with as well. And I knew as I was doing the call, it was ripping me apart. But I knew also that it wasn't terminal. I knew that I could do the job, and I walked away. But I knew at that point that I was a mess, but I wasn't a broken mess. And so I called up my comms and I said, I am a mess. I am not on the road anymore, which has its own issues because I'm the highest qualified, so I support other people. But I knew that support was not there for those people because I was myself no good. But I drove away. I managed to buy a coffee, but I couldn't remember what fuel the vehicle took. I couldn't remember the code for the vehicle fuel card. I couldn't open the petrol cap. I was non-functional, and I went and I drove to a local river because I need space and time on my own. I ignored all the manager's calls. I ignored all my colleague calls, and I just sat and I was on my own overlooking the river, just thinking, working stuff through, using some of the things that Victoria had told me about, what decisions I had made, what decisions he had made, what control I had, about how to respond to the physical enormity of seeing something that's horrific, and how to mitigate that. And it took me about an hour and a half, but actually, as a result of everything Victoria had been through, and as a result of everything that I had done that she had told me to do, even though it was hard, I was able to work through the call, do the call, and go back on the road and say, I'm okay. It's not a good day, but I'm okay. And do I ever want to do that again? Absolutely not. Could I do it again? Yes. And this is part of when you go through this therapy, and when you put the uniform back on, you learn what resilience is, and you learn what post-traumatic growth is, because it's not about ever wanting to do it again. It's not ever wanting to be in that place again. It's not about being happy what happened to you. It's not about being happy that you had to do it again. It's about saying, those memories that were so damaging and what I have just done and the way I have dealt with it, they can all coexist. And it's not something I have to be pleased or happy or want to do again. But the healthy part is that I can coexist with that and know that it is wrong, but that it is not something that is going to cause me to go home and shout at the kids. It's not something that's going to cause me to down a bottle of grog, as you say. It's not going to cause me to destroy relationships, because I'm aware of the fact that I was damaged, the fact that damage is still there but packaged correctly now, the fact that I can still incur some damage, but the fact that when I incur damage now, I can treat it appropriately. And that's a very, very long-winded answer to your question.
Well, I mean, it is a long answer, but it's vitally important as well, because I think despite the fact we have different circumstances and the treatment modalities were different, the outcomes are very much the same, which is that we've been. It's not a case of being cured. We're not cured, but we've got strategies and management practices and protocols and things that we can do to help ourselves, but more importantly, to recognize when those things aren't happening and know who you've got. You've always still got that lifeline back to Victoria, right?
Yes.
And so that you can say, I'm in this situation. I know we haven't seen each other for a year, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I'm in this situation. Everything you taught me, it's not working. You've still got that lifeline, and I think that's the real important takeaway. And I think that's great, which I think really kind of segues into this. Now, obviously, you've written a couple of books, haven't you? But this one, by the way, for all our listeners out there, this is a fantastic read. It goes into a lot of detail about a lot of aspects around everything that we're talking about today. But I guess my first question is like, why write the book in the first place?
So I fell apart in 2018. I wrote a long email to my colleagues saying, sorry, can't do it anymore. I'm not coming back. And a lot of them said, sorry to hear it, hope you're okay. And no one expected to see me again. At least I did not expect to walk back through a set of ambulance doors. I was so broken at that point. I couldn't even go to the ambulance station to meet my boss for anything when he was following up on me. He had to come to my house. And obviously, as you know, I went, saw Victoria. It all got, we worked through stuff, and I needed to re-challenge. And I went back in February 2020. And I thought, this is my journey. I'm not ashamed of it. It's just me. This is just what happened. I wonder, I'll tell other people because, I'm not, it's not a secret. I'm not embarrassed about it. And a couple of people sidled up to me and said, can you just tell me about this? Or can you help me with this? And they were struggling. And then I realized that there were so many people. And then I started getting messages from nationally. And then I started getting messages internationally. And I thought, oh, this is a real problem. And St. John have developed a really good health and wellbeing team. And I have a really good relationship with the managers there. And they said, would you do a 10-minute video about your journey? And I said, absolutely. I said, if it helps anyone. Because my rationale is I went through absolute hell. I went through crap. If I can prevent someone else from going through that, I'm absolutely going to do that. Because if I can help, then brilliant. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And so I did the video. And then I did another video. So that's called PTSD. I forget what it's called, but it's something about me personally. And then about a year later, we did one about PTSD and the family and how the family are affected by PTSD, and that's on site. And these are all available. I've actually got them; they're available publicly. And then I thought, well, hang on, I can write a book because I've written 5 books. I wrote one for my daughter when she was 8 or 10. And then I wrote another one for both of them. And then you can't write one book for one daughter and not one for another one. So I wrote another one when my youngest became 8 or 10. And then I thought, wow, I've done 30 years. I've got some really cool stories. So then I wrote another book called The Guts of It, which is just a selection of mad, sad, bonkers and funny tales of things that just situations that you think, really? Did that really happen? And they're all true. So I wrote a book of ambulance stories, which is quite popular. So I published a few books, and I thought, I'm going to write one about this, which is obviously on a very different vein. And I just wrote my journey, my experiences, what I felt. There's a lot about what PTSD actually is and what it isn't. There's a lot about resilience and growth. There's stuff about ACC. There's stuff about how the family affected. how I developed, what my signs and symptoms were. There's a section in there about if you're new to the service, what strategies you can use before you get to where I did. And it's just a really comprehensive story of beginning to end and the bits in between of my journey. But it's also how you can avoid going where I went. And it's really good and it's really bad. The number of people who have said, "Wow, I've really, the book's spoken to me." I've hundreds and hundreds of books I've sold, and given away because the messages in the book are important, more important than me getting money for the book. So I give the books away if people haven't got money. But obviously, I'm self-publishing, so it'd be nice to get some money back. But it is more important that people read the messages. Hundreds of people, and some people have said, "Look, I can't read it in one sitting; it's too much." Some people have said it's inspired me to go and get help. Some people have said I've shown this to my family so they understand. It is, and I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but actually, it's an incredibly important book for anyone with any kind of mental stress or psychological stress, and certainly in any kind of service. It's incredibly important to read so you maybe recognize in yourself something that others have been telling you, or that you may go, oh, that's a bit too close to home. Or for families who need to read about why we are the way we are. Families can say, oh, that puts it into some context. And so the reason I wrote it, pure and simple, is to help anyone who wants to read it and just to try to make a difference so that we don't, I keep a track on the number of medics worldwide, number of police officers who commit suicide don't commit suicide, who choose suicide, and it hurts me every time. And so if I can stop that from happening, then if I can make a tiny difference, I will. That's why I wrote it.
Nice. Well, that leads on to the next easy question. So, obviously, I've plugged the book. You've just plugged the book. Where can we get the book from?
I'm not plugging the book. I'm not really not plugging the book, but I think it's important for people. So I've got my own website. www.markbellchamber.com, and that's Bellchamber is BELCHAMBER. There's only one L in it. Markbellchamber.com, and that's got all sorts of stuff on there. But if you go down to the St. John section or the books section, you'll find it there. There's that's probably the easiest way of finding it. Markbellchamber.com. That's probably the easiest way of finding it. People do contact me personally. I mean, I'm on Facebook. People can contact me through Facebook, and I'm on LinkedIn. People can contact me through LinkedIn, and obviously they can contact you. I know that you have a couple of books, so yeah. But my
I will say for the record though, if you want to buy them through our website, you're paying for them because I kind of look at it and go, for those who need them, get them. Hang on, no, let's put it differently. When we're selling them for merchandise purposes, we are utilizing the money to help other people. So that's why we're selling them. But if you want to get it for free and you can't afford it, sure, when our copies are exhausted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So your organisation's, absolutely. Your organisation does really good work, and I think that's great. The money, I don't really care what happens. It's the fact that somehow, somewhere, other people's mental health is being supported in some way.
Yep. Yeah, agree. And so I guess like in terms of kind of dialogue, I mean, we're kicking in nearly an hour and a half now, I think. Are there any other kind of messages you think that we would want to pass on to our listeners? I mean, because I found that this just listening to your story has been hugely there are so many elements that resonates with my story, but also the fact that it's really inspiring to know the fact that, you know, we've made it, you're here, we can both kind of joke and laugh and, you know, have some fun about it. I mean, it's still a desperately serious topic that we're talking about, but we've made it through, and very inspirational, I have to say, very inspirational. So I'm so glad you're here still. I really am. So,
thank you,
is
Chris.
there anything else you think people want to know?
I mean, one of the things that people say is, "Oh, you're really brave to share your story." And it's like, I just do not see it. It's just I'm just being open so that other people don't go there. I think it's really important that if other people are saying stuff to you like you've changed, or why do you not want to go and see people anymore, or why do you not do this anymore, sit up and take notice, because other people notice what you don't. It's especially if it annoys you. If it annoys you, that might be a self-protective mechanism. I think one really important thing for me was, one of the first things I said to Victoria was, I'm not like those people who. So I compared myself to people who had been sexually abused. I compared myself to war veterans, to people who'd actually been in active combat and seen all that. I compared myself to people who I saw was deserving of PTSD, and people who should get it, and I understood why they got it. And actually, all I did was I worked on an ambulance. I wasn't that important. It's absolutely vital to say that anyone from any walk of life, if your experience is significant enough, you can suffer from PTSD. And so don't ever say to yourself, "Oh, I won't suffer from that," or "I can't suffer from that because or I am only," because that's absolutely not true. If you recognize anything that Chris or I have talked about, you can't ignore it. You just do not ignore it. Yeah.
Nice. It's really inspirational. Last question, and you know, you can't run a podcast without doing some kind of digging, right, about who your guest is going to be. And so I did a bit of digging, as you do, and I just like to prove, confirm or deny a tidbit that I've heard, that you don't have a sense of smell, and so partly as through your kind of career, if there was something that was particularly gruesome, that involved bodily fluids, nasty smelling stuff, they'd send you. Is that the case?
It is basically true. I mean, you can't get to choose who you send to a call, but I have definitely had colleagues who have walked into a scene and literally turned out and walked back out and said, "Yours." and I have literally, I have been, so if you have a situation, there's a couple of conditions that are really, really stinky. If you have an ulcer or something in your bowel that bleeds, and it mixes with the fecal matter that you are naturally make, apparently it makes the most horrific stench, far more so than normal. It's a condition called melena. And I have literally had someone walk into a house through the front door, turn green and go, that's Melina. I'm off, and it literally haven't been able to walk into the house. I've also had a poor lady, a lady who we worked out that she had naturally passed away 4 days in the summer. So there were 4 days for the post on her on her doorstep. The gas hob was on. For some reason, the electric heater was on, and it was summer. And the police were, and I needed to confirm death. And apparently, it was just that the police were just piling out the house, and they sent me in. And when I said, "Where is she?" they all laughed at me. So yeah, yeah. I mean, in my profession, not having a sense of smell is actually a good thing. But I've never smelt my newborn babies. My daughter, when she was younger, would always take an item of clothing and she'd sleep with it because she says, "Daddy, it smells of you." I've never smelt my family. I've never smelt flowers. I've never smelt, So there's some things that, but I don't ever remember having one. I've never ever I was born without one, and so I don't miss it because I don't know what I'm missing.
Wow.
But I do know that a lot of my colleagues are quite grateful to work with me when we get the sticky people.
Well, all I'm going to say is I'm so glad that that's true because it's like what a bloody pub story that is. So it's but I think as well. Oh no, I could keep going about that, but like that is epic, Mark. I think we, now that we've officially hit an hour and 32 minutes or so, I think you've just shared with me an amazing story and journey of growth through some exceptional hard times, and I just want to say thank you for that. I mean, I know that like. I can understand when you say like it's just my story and I'm just sharing it, and there undoubtedly there are going to be people out there who will be listening to this and will be triggered at some point, because even I at times were listening and go, yeah, I understand, I get that, and I just want to say it's like I know that you don't consider yourself being brave, but remember that you're the one wearing the uniform. You're the one who keeps putting yourself in the lion's den. You're the one who's returned back and following all of this. And not only that, you are brave enough to be able to share your story. And I just want to acknowledge that and say, even people who have worn uniforms won't do that. They will get the therapy, but it's still an incredibly private journey. And I just want to thank you and acknowledge the brevity that you're providing. And the time that you're sharing with me and with our listeners today to for us to all understand. I mean, thank you. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I mean, I appreciate, thank you for your words. I honestly, Chris, I appreciate the platform because it allows me to continue to speak to other people, and even if it speaks to just one person out of your entire platform, then it's been worth it. And I can talk the hind leg off a donkey. I'm very happy talking. So, thanks for having me. And I'm more than happy to engage with anyone at any point about my journey. I'm not a professional. I can't give you answers, but I can certainly give you some confirmation and say, yeah, that's. I recognize where you're at, and you're not. Very often, you kind of think, "Am I going mad? Am I the only one here?" It's a very lonely place, and it's really important to recognize, no, you're not going mad, and no, you're not on your own, because it's way more than you realize. So, thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you. I think that's a wrap. Is
Cool.
Is there any last thing you want to say? Any questions you want to ask, or shall we just call time and and hit stop.
No, I think we've covered it. You've probably heard enough of me now. No, I think it's cool. We'll hit stop. What I'll say is happy to revisit anything with you or any of your listeners at any point if that's appropriate, and if not, then I wish everyone safe health.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. I'll take all the links and the contact methods and all the rest of it. I'll drop it into show notes so that if anyone out there wants to get hold of Mark, they can. And I'll provide links on how to go get the book through us, through Mark directly as well. And if there's anything that you have heard in today's session that you would like us to kind of elaborate on, please do reach out, Chris at tangokilomike.org. And once again, Mark, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome.